it's Thistle Verse, and today I will be reviewing The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. I received an advanced reader's copy of this book through Netgalley. Thank you to the publishers for that. All opinions are my own. So, in a futuristic world where the sun is so hot it can boil people alive at midday, and poverty is rampant, Wiley City is an oasis. With its wealth and technological bounty, it can block the harmful UV rays, provide free housing and social services to all its citizens, and even send people to other versions of Earth in the multiverse. Of course, there's a catch. People known as transversers can only be sent to other worlds where their double is dead. Logically, there aren't many viable transversers in the cushy Wiley City, and they must recruit from the slums of nearby Ashtown. Kara, a black queer woman who is dead on almost all other worlds, is a prime transverser. After living in Ashtown under the thumb of the violent and temperamental warlord Nick, she's determined to obtain a Wiley City citizenship and lead a life of comfort, no matter what questionable business practices she must overlook from her employer. When she's not world hopping, she spends her time in a flirtationship with her handler Dell and battling existential crises. But her world is upended when another of herselves dies in a mysterious way and what should be a routine assignment goes awry. So, I was ecstatic to get this arc. This was one of my most anticipated releases of the year. I really love multiverses. I was hyped for a black woman protagonist and a sapphic relationship. And this was like the first advanced reader's copy request I had granted, just immediately. So this is a very just significant moment for me in general. And I was really hoping to love this book. And it's a solid book. I really enjoyed Kara as a protagonist. She's just very pragmatic and selfish and jaded, and she keeps her circle small. And I just enjoyed all those things about her. I enjoyed her banter with Dell. I enjoyed how unbothered she is by some of the things that go on. And I think that she was the main thing that I really enjoyed about this story, and she is the focus of the story, so I think that worked. I'd seen some reviews online that were praising this as a commentary on privilege and oppression, and I would say that, that commentary is there, and I'm going to talk about it, but I feel like it's about as relevant to the story as, indictments of capitalism are relevant to Jurassic Park. It's there, but I wouldn't say it's really the focus. And as far as the space between worlds go, I didn't feel like any of the commentary went terribly deep. I felt like at its heart this story was a thriller, and I thought that it was a very good thriller. I enjoyed the way the world building happens. There's some information given at the beginning. The information you're given is very limited, and you just kind of watch the world unfurl. You learn bits and pieces about the world pretty constantly through the book, almost up until the 3/4 mark. And I would also just give a heads up that the romance here is a slow burn, the slowest of burns, maybe 2 little embers in a fire type of burn. There's maybe 2 sentences of steaminess going on. They were a good 2 sentences. I got to the end and I was like, don't be stingy now, come on, give us the rest. Reread it a few times hoping the rest would appear, but no such luck. I thought the most satisfying relationships in the story are the ones that Kara has with herself. And she has a few enduring ties with one of her coworkers and a family member. So in terms of the social commentary that is here, I felt like there was commentary on social inequality, selective utopias, and resource hoarding. And I felt this manifested in the business practices of this transversing company that allows Wiley City to build its wealth, and also how this wealth is propped up by the misery of people not a stone's throw away from them. The story talks about borders as arbitrary in general, in terms of inhabitants' morality, in terms of who gets called a criminal and who doesn't, and I feel like all of that is really heightened because the areas in question, Ashtown and Wiley City, are so small and so close, and that is highlighted in how the citizens of Wiley City will project a lot of their issues with themselves and distaste for certain things onto the residents of Ashtown, even though, again, the people of Ashtown are so vital to the wealth of Wiley City. It also talks about borders as arbitrary in terms of who receives care and services. It's pretty explicitly stated that in Wiley City, housing is a right for Wiley City citizens. Why can't those services be extended to people who live in the city who don't have Wiley City citizenships? Kara is from Ashtown. She's basically in Wiley City on a working visa, and she spends a lot of time worrying about, will certain things jeopardize her ability to get a citizenship, worrying about job security, because if she is fired, she will be thrown out of Wiley City and sent back to Ashtown, where her life is in danger. That's really the whole reason why she came to Wiley City, to work as a transverser. There were two, I guess I would call them social commentaries, that I considered highlights for me. And they were kind of, like I said, not really delved into. That wasn't a focus of the story. It was just a quick 1 or 2 sentences here or there that made me stop and really think. And I really appreciated that Micaiah Johnson does a lot with like these very small moments. One of the things I really appreciated was that I feel like a very obvious sentiment from the story, talking about how borders are arbitrary. Anyone on either side of that border could be a criminal. What even is a criminal? What constitutes being a criminal? And it would be very easy for this to have just been like, we're all human, like borders don't matter, and just let that be a sentiment. But I felt like Micaiah Johnson actually embodied that the people in Ashtown have humanity and worth and unique things to offer the world and each other. Like Kara pretty explicitly says, there are things about Ashtown that I miss and that I need and that I wish Wiley City had, and it just doesn't. That certain ways of living and earning income in Ashtown may be derided by the people of Wiley City, but are shown to give the workers a certain dignity they can't get in Wiley City. And so I just appreciated that Micaiah Johnson didn't just let that be a toothless sentiment. She actually showed what that looks like. And the second thing that really stood out for me about this world was how sex workers in Ashtown were shown to be vital, skilled, and very important and valued members of society. I don't think it's uncommon for sex workers to be included in science fiction or fantasy, but when they're there, it's often sort of a grimy and sensationalist lens. And often they're shown being brutalized and opened up to violence. And there's not a lot of questioning on why do people have this attitude towards them. It's kind of just uncritically presented. And so it was refreshing to see their skills being praised, to see them being stated as a vital part of life in Ashtown. And they're consistently the safest characters, I felt in this story. I think the closest thing I've read to something like this would be the Sisters of Hananja from the Dreamblood duology. So I really appreciated that addition. In terms of larger themes, we're going to hear a lot about the space between worlds. Micaiah Johnson was very intentional about using this as a motif that sort of pops up throughout the novel in different ways. The space between worlds is a social space. It's where Kara is, space between being an Ashtown citizen and a Wiley City citizen, and, social mobility. The space between worlds is also the literal space between the different worlds in the multiverse. The transversers have almost a superstition and religious system where there's a goddess Nyame who occupies the space between worlds, and she is very mysterious, cloaked in mystery, and she shows up every now and again. The space between worlds is also misunderstandings. This novel talks a lot about how people's environments and perspectives shapes who they are and shapes their worldview and thus their world, and how having different circumstances can cause miscommunications and misconnections. Another big theme in here was how important environment is to people's identities, because Kara is sort of world hopping and seeing the ways in which differences in political events and personal events have led to differences in the people in her life and in the worlds in the multiverse. She realizes how nothing's really inevitable and how big a role environment plays in who you are and your values. And also, I thought another big theme in here was learning to heal from trauma. Kara had a very traumatic past living in Ashtown. Many of the times that she died on other worlds, it was due to neglect and poverty. There's a lot of healing that happens in terms of seeing on the few worlds that she did live what her life was like, and also in realizing that nothing is inevitable, and seeing worlds where certain tragic outcomes didn't have to happen. And she finds unexpected catharsis in her world hopping. So in terms of the ending, I wasn't super big on it. There's like kind of a long period of time where it really is focused on Kara's personal growth. And then sort of to create the major conflict, it felt like Kara had to randomly like develop a conscience, which I wasn't big on. I was like, I get it. I guess you kind of need this bigger conflict to give the story like a sense of like climax and movement. But I felt like her character was bent in ways that didn't make sense. Kara has always had a very small circle, and it felt like she started to care very deeply about people outside that circle. And that didn't feel consistent to who she had been shown to be up to that point. And it also just like wasn't what I liked about her character. And also, it was odd. Like, I felt like this novel, Space Between Worlds, focuses a lot on tension and liminality. And like that carries through to the end. There is a lot of like in betweenness in the end and like ambiguity, but also there were things that felt like weirdly simple. There were some things that I wanted to resolve that weren't, and there are things that I thought it would have made more sense to leave open that were kind of closed. So I wasn't super big on the ending, but I felt like there's so much other stuff going on that I wasn't too bothered. I still really enjoyed the story. If you like the video, please hit the like button. The book is scheduled to be published on August 4th. Do you think you'll be checking out this book? What did you think of my review? If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. It's a good way to stay up to date with me and my bookish activities. I have a lot of fun content planned. I have a readathon coming up in October, and so you'll want to stay tuned for announcements around that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good one. Stay safe. Goodbye.